But I work on this a good 60 hours a week.
He's published everything from a hippie newspaper to a glossy bicycle magazine. But these days, Michael Rosenberg is writing the story of his life, a newsletter for hemophiliacs stricken with AIDS.
The people I network with now, we have deaths happening all the time. And we're seeing wholesale devastation of families, multiple cases of HIV within one family. Hello? I was more and more amazed that nobody, absolutely nobody, was going to bat for the people with hemophilia and HIV in this country. Oh, what a deal. All right, it's very exciting over here. Come on over.
More than activism is in his blood. Michael himself has AIDS. He's battling HIV the same way he and a brother battled a lifetime of hemophilia, head on.
When we were out on our own from our parents, we did extreme things. I raced cars for a couple of years.
But the risks Michael took on the track could never compare to the risk hidden in his own medicine. Factor VIII, a highly concentrated powder made from the blood plasma of thousands. It gave hemophiliacs the protein necessary for blood clotting. It also gave them AIDS.
Bobby Campbell of San Francisco and Billy Walker of New York both suffer from a mysterious, newly discovered disease which affects mostly homosexual men, but has also been found in heterosexual men and women.
We're very concerned that this was an infectious agent from the outset, because gay men have a tradition of transmitting infectious diseases.
Dr. Don Francis was one of the first physicians ever to hear of a strange new disease affecting gay men. He'd earned a reputation at the Centers for Disease Control as an expert on epidemics. Yet when he blew the whistle, no one was listening. July 1982, the CDC issues a report that 3 hemophiliacs have developed unusual infections that they can't seem to fight. The National Hemophilia Foundation tells members it may be a virus transmitted by blood products. But the risk is minimal, they say, and patients are reminded 3 times within the same memo not to change their treatment.
The hemophiliacs actually were a critical piece of the puzzle, because they filter the plasma that is used with a size of filter that keeps bacteria out and anything bigger. And so the size of the infectious agent was dictated in many ways by recognizing the hemophiliac cases.
Yet 6 months later, hemophilia officials, drug companies, blood banks, and the government still wouldn't recognize the risks. January 1983, there are now 5 cases of AIDS in hemophiliacs, 3 more under study, and suspicion of a transmissible agent in factor VIII concentrate. There is talk of a better concentrate within the year, one that is heat-treated to, quote, inactivate hepatitis B virus and presumably eliminate other transmissible agents.
The hemophiliacs and the blood recipients, and it all fit into a package that looks so similar to hepatitis B virus that I don't think anyone with experience in infectious disease doubted that it was infectious at that point.
In fact, long before AIDS, hepatitis had been a serious problem for hemophiliacs, their number 2 cause of death. It was such a concern that by 1981, a German company patented a way to kill the virus in clotting factor medicine by heating it. Pasteurization had been used for years in the U.S. to clean other blood products like albumin, but never factor VIII.
There was a clear and crying need that something be done. Curiously, the way it worked out, anything that would have been done to address the hepatitis problem would have resulted in there being no hemophiliacs or their spouses being infected through that channel.
Well, it is that. It's a Pollyannish argument. I mean, the fact is that we attempted in the 1970s to eliminate the hepatitis virus and were unsuccessful. That attempt continued into the 1980s, and when AIDS came along, the process was then determined that it would work, and by luck and by good fortune, the AIDS virus was killed by it.
But that luck and good fortune took years. Again, back to January 1983. After a child develops AIDS from a blood transfusion, an official in the blood banking industry writes, there is little doubt additional cases in patients with hemophilia will surface. The most we can do is buy time.
And so nothing was done. So as a result, 10, 15 plus thousand Americans are dying of HIV disease that could have been prevented.
Because there is so much absolutely stunning information.
Michael Rosenberg has uncovered and published stacks of memos written behind the scenes. Memos that suggest drug companies dragged their feet and covered up the danger. January 24th, 1983, 6 months after the first AIDS cases. Cutter Pharmaceuticals predicts a projected loss of business if another manufacturer beats it to market with a heat-treated clotting concentrate, heated to kill HIV. A month later, Cutter writes to plasma centers, it is believed Factor VIII and Factor IX can pass AIDS on to the recipient. Yet 3 months later, in the company's magazine published 4 patients, a top National Hemophilia Foundation doctor says whether, if, and how it relates to therapy is completely unclear. The information is called the most up-to-date available. That same month, experts tell Cutter expect 50% of hemophiliacs to come down with AIDS. And when another company introduces heat-treated factor, Cutter officials propose to fight the fire with a short-term solution that will preserve our market position.
I think that there's language in memos that if the person writing it knew that that those memos were going to be used in a courtroom and going to be blown up and shown to a jury and 3 or 4 words taken out of context, sure they would have been written different.
The case that there was a systematic negligence and a failure to warn is overwhelming.
It was 1984, 2 years into the epidemic before heat-treated factor became available to most hemophiliacs nationwide.
That if that were in place in the late 70s in the United States and early 80s, you wouldn't have HIV infection hemophiliacs.
It seems to me unfair that somehow or other these companies should have done something that no one else in the world could do, and that is prevent people from being infected with blood products.
Actually, tomorrow morning, I have to do some database updating,
Today, it's rare to find a severe hemophiliac who was alive in the early 80s who was not infected with HIV. Michael wants all of them to hear what he calls the real story before it's too late.
It clearly was preventable. It was caused by corporate systematic negligence in our case, and we have a negligence issue, and that's the bottom line.